My brother stole the entire inheritance by forging our dad's will. He thought I'd roll over and disappear, but he had no idea what I'd uncover. Bomb hidden accounts. Forged signatures. A secret trust. And just when he thought it was over, I hit back harder. You won't believe how this family feud ends. You ever have one of those moments where life sucker punches you out of nowhere? Yeah. That was me, standing in a half-empty church watching my brother fake cry over our father's casket like he hadn't ignored the man for a decade. We weren't close growing up. I was the screw-up older son who didn't go to college, while Mark was the golden child who couldn't do anything wrong. He was always mom and dad's favorite, and I made my peace with that a long time ago. Or at least I thought I had. Our father passed away after a long battle with Parkinson's. I was the one who took care of him. I moved back into the house. I handled the doctors, the bills, the cleanup when things got bad. Mark? He sent flowers. Once. So you can imagine my shock when the will was read, and Dad left everything to Mark. The house. The bank accounts. The land. Even Dad's vintage Corvette he promised me when I was 16. All of it. No explanation, no letters, not even a thank you for being his caregiver for the last 5 years of his life. The lawyer, some slick suit Dad trusted from back in his business days, read it off like it was just another day at work. I sat there, trying not to explode, while Mark had the audacity to shrug and say, "I guess Dad just thought I'd handle it better." That was when the storm started brewing in my head. After the reading, Mark pulled me aside and offered me a check, $10,000, to help you get back on your feet. As if I was some bum begging outside a Waffle House. "You can't be serious," I said, voice low, hands clenched. He smiled like a politician. "Hey, I didn't ask for all this. I'll sell the house eventually, but maybe you should start looking for somewhere else to stay." Somewhere else to stay? I lived in that house for 5 years, with Dad. I gave up my life for him. I wiped drool off his chin and made sure he got his meds on time while Mark played corporate golf and posted beach selfies with his third wife. So yeah, I left. But I didn't walk away. 2 weeks later, I came back while Mark was still off handling his transition into the estate. He hadn't moved in yet, which meant the house was mostly empty, except for the parts that mattered. Dad was meticulous about record-keeping. He kept folders upon folders of receipts, insurance policies, land deeds, even his handwritten journal. I didn't touch any of the money. But I found something else, something Mark had no clue about. A lockbox in the attic. Inside? Letters. Dozens of them. One for every year since I turned 18. They were all from Dad. He talked about how much he appreciated what I did. How he regretted not saying it more. In one of the letters, dated 6 months before he died, he wrote, "I've changed the will again. Everything will go to you. If you're reading this, and that didn't happen, check with Greystone Bank." I left instructions. But there was no Greystone Bank account in the will. Nothing about it at all. And that's when it hit me, the will was tampered with. I spent the next month playing detective. It wasn't easy. Greystone had been merged into another bank 2 years prior, but I found the archived data with some help from a friend who worked in finance. Sure enough, Dad had an account. Not a huge one, but enough, $180,000. And it was missing. Closed out a week before Dad died. I asked for the paperwork. They couldn't tell me everything, but they showed me enough. The signature on the withdrawal? Looked familiar. It was Mark's. I didn't blow up. Not right away. I waited. I sat in my truck with that paperwork in my lap, heart pounding. I wasn't just angry, I was scorched earth furious. My brother had forged our dying father's signature, and drained nearly $200,000 from a secret account. And the will? That slick lawyer probably never saw the real final version. Or worse, he did, and helped hide it. I could have gone straight to the police. But I knew how these things worked. Mark had money, charm, and connections. I had a beat-up truck, 2 boxes of Dad's records, and a righteous sense of betrayal. So instead of storming into the sheriff's office, I called in a favor from my old buddy Craig, who used to do private investigations before retiring early. He owed me from back in the day when I helped him dodge an ugly divorce. He agreed to poke around, quietly. Within a week, Craig confirmed everything I feared. The will Dad signed a few months before passing? Mark had it destroyed and replaced it with an earlier version from before I moved back in. The notary? A friend of Mark's from college. Craig even got a hold of a blurry photo from a bar security cam where Mark met with the lawyer 3 days after Dad died. Envelope in hand. Classic. But here's the kicker, Mark wasn't working alone. His third wife, Chelsea, had a criminal record. Small-time stuff, fraud, forgery, identity theft. Her fingerprints were all over the fake documents. That woman hadn't married my brother for love, she married him for my father's money. And she was good at it. So I played dumb. I texted Mark, told him I was moving on and grateful for the help. He ate it up like a puppy with a pork chop. Meanwhile, I got my ducks in a row. Copies of the journal entries. Letters from Dad. Copies of the bank withdrawal forms. Craig even found a recording of a phone call Mark made to a financial advisor bragging about tying up loose ends before probate. I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. But more than that, I wanted to take everything back. Piece by piece. I started with Chelsea. I knew she couldn't resist a good story, and I knew just how to bait her. I created a fake profile, pretended to be a trust fund tech bro looking to diversify assets, and connect with the right kind of woman. She took the bait within 24 hours. Classic narcissist. Always hunting for the bigger fish. We exchanged messages for a week. Then I dropped one simple line. "You ever help someone fake a will? Sounds like a wild story." She didn't reply for 3 days. Then she blocked the account. But that silence? That was confirmation. I passed it all along to Craig's old contacts. One of them knew a probate lawyer in Atlanta with a grudge against Mark from some past shady deal. She took the case for free. The next thing I knew, we had filed a formal challenge to the will. Probate court would have to freeze all transfers, including the house, car, and remaining assets, until the matter was resolved. And Mark? Oh, he was livid. He showed up at my apartment with fake smiles and vague threats. Said I was making a fool of myself, that Dad's mind was going toward the end and I was reading too much into things. I let him talk. I even offered him a beer. Then I handed him a printed copy of one of Dad's final journal entries. If Mark tries anything, remind him he's not the only one who knows how to fight dirty. Ryan deserves it all. I'll make sure he gets it. Mark's face strained of color. He knew he was screwed. But the best part, he didn't know what was coming next. Craig had dug up something else. A piece of land out in Jackson County, left off the will, listed under a business name Dad created in the 80s. Still in his name. Still unclaimed. Guess who Dad listed as successor trustee in that LLC? Me. A 15-acre property, no mortgage, sitting on land the county was about to rezone for commercial development. That land alone? Worth over $300,000, and Mark didn't even know it existed. Dad may have written me out of the visible will, but he left me buried treasure. When we filed the challenge to the will, Mark played it cool in public. But behind the scenes, he was panicking. His fancy lawyer started flooding us with demands, accusations that I was mentally unstable. That I'd coerced Dad in his final months, and that the letters and journal were fabricated. Nice try. Our lawyer, Miss Jensen, had already submitted forensic handwriting analysis. Verified, all the letters and journal entries were real, and all written in Dad's own hand. I watched Mark squirm when that report hit the docket. His face looked like someone had poured sour milk into his morning coffee. But the real bomb was still ticking, the land in Jackson County. While he was trying to claw his way out of a forged will scandal, I quietly filed the transfer of ownership under Dad's LLC to myself. It was all legal. All above board. And Mark didn't find out until a developer knocked on my door, offering $500,000 for the land after zoning changes got approved. I didn't sell right away. I wanted him to know I had it first. So I sent him a photo. Me, sitting on a folding chair in the middle of that empty field, holding a cold beer and flipping him the bird. He didn't reply. But 2 hours later, I got a notification. Mark's lawyer had withdrawn from the case. Then Chelsea cracked. Turns out, our little catfishing stunt left more than bruised ego behind. Craig's buddy managed to get screen recordings of the messages where Chelsea all but admitted she helped clean up some estate paperwork. The screenshots were sent to the district attorney's office. The DA didn't file charges, yet, but they issued a subpoena to freeze Mark's accounts pending investigation. That meant no access to the estate money. No access to the house. No access to the Corvette. Mark was furious. He tried calling me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail screaming that I was ruining his life and disrespecting our father's memory. I played that voicemail in court. The judge looked unimpressed. But then the story turned again. Chelsea flipped on Mark to save herself. In a surprise deposition, she admitted he pressured her into forging the documents. Claimed he told her Dad had lost it mentally. And that Ryan doesn't deserve a penny. She even gave them copies of emails where Mark planned the forgery before Dad's death. That was the beginning of the end. Probate court ruled in our favor. The fake will was invalidated. Dad's most recent will, the one naming me as the sole heir, was restored. The Corvette? Mine. The house? Mine. The accounts? Transferred within a week. But I wasn't finished yet. Because Mark did more than steal from Dad. He stole from me. See, while I was working full-time as Dad's caregiver, Mark convinced him to sign off on a refinance deal for the house, without telling me. Dad was already struggling mentally at the time. Mark had tricked him into using my name as the co-signer. Which meant I was still legally on the hook for $40,000 in debt I didn't even know about. Until now. So I filed fraud charges. This time, through the civil court system. We were going to drag every last secret into the light. 1 week later, I got a letter in the mail. Not from Mark. From our mother. Yeah, her. The woman who hadn't talked to me since 2015, back when she said I was a lazy failure, for quitting my job to care for Dad. The letter was short. I can't believe what you're doing to your brother. He's been through enough. You're tearing this family apart. You always were selfish. No signature. Just a printed page. No return address. I laughed. And then I framed it. Because that letter? It proved what I'd known all along. I was never part of the family. Not really. And that was fine, because what came next would make sure they'd never forget me. After Mom's letter, I wasn't surprised when she showed up to court. She walked in with Mark, dressed in her Sunday best, holding his arm like they were royalty. Like she wasn't siding with a man who forged his dying father's will. I hadn't seen her in nearly a decade, and the first words out of her mouth were, "You've really lost your way, Ryan." I didn't respond. Because the truth? I didn't care what she thought anymore. But the judge definitely did. See, Miss Jensen had a few surprises of her own. While Mark tried to argue that the forgery was a misunderstanding, and not criminal, she introduced a timeline, matching every financial withdrawal to every doctor's appointment I'd scheduled for Dad. She even brought in Dad's neurologist to testify. "I treated Mr. Larson for 4 years," the doctor said. "And in the last 6 months of his life, he was very aware of who was taking care of him, and who wasn't." Boom. Mark's whole argument, that Dad was senile and confused, fell apart like a soggy paper towel. Then came the real bomb. Miss Jensen pulled out a notarized letter Dad had written to his accountant, one I'd never even seen before. It read, "If my sons fight over the money, let the record speak." Ryan showed up. Mark showed up with excuses. I only trust one of them. That was the nail in the coffin. The judge ruled that Mark had acted in bad faith, attempted to defraud the estate, and would be personally liable for the financial damage caused by freezing and mismanaging assets. That $180,000 he withdrew from Greystone? He had to pay it back. Plus legal fees. Plus damages. Total judgment, $271,000. After the ruling, Mark completely snapped. In the hallway outside the courtroom, he shoved a camera crew that had shown up from a local news station. Yeah, by then, word had gotten out. Man accuses brother of forging father's will. Made a pretty good headline. He was escorted out by deputies. Chelsea wasn't there. She'd already filed for divorce and left the state. Smart woman, honestly. Mom gave me one last look, like I was a stranger who'd burned down her house. She didn't say goodbye. And I didn't care. That night, I sat alone in the old house, now legally mine. I opened a bottle of bourbon Dad used to keep hidden behind the bookshelf and poured myself a glass. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. But then, just when I thought it was over, I got another letter. This one wasn't from Mom. It was from a woman named Caitlin Greer. Apparently, she was Dad's former business partner from the early 90s. She'd heard about the trial and wanted to talk. Why? Because she claimed Dad had once told her about a second trust, one he never told any of us about. And it wasn't in his name. It was in hers. I drove 3 hours to meet her in person. We sat in a small coffee shop in downtown Asheville. She was in her 60s, sharp as a tack, and came prepared with a briefcase. Inside? Originals. Dad had set up a backup trust in the late 90s, back when he suspected Mark was stealing from his business. It had sat dormant for years, untouched, quietly accruing interest. Guess who the beneficiary was? Me. Balance? $402,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. Caitlin explained that Dad had asked her to keep it secret until the time was right. Apparently, he'd suspected Mom and Mark would try something shady. The trust was his final insurance plan. There was just one condition: I had to do something with it that helped others. Your father didn't just want you to inherit money, Caitlin told me. He wanted you to make something out of it. Build something. Help someone who needs it like he once did. That night, I went home and sat in the driveway of Dad's house, staring at the stars. Thinking about everything we'd gone through. Everything I'd lost. Everything I'd gained. And that's when I made my decision. For the first time in my life, I had money that didn't come with strings. No guilt. No manipulation. Just the raw opportunity to build something from the ashes. And yet I didn't rush to spend a dime. I sat on it for a month, just thinking. Remembering what it felt like when the refrigerator broke in the middle of winter and I couldn't afford repairs. What it was like watching Dad cry because his body wouldn't listen to him anymore, and we couldn't afford full-time care. The silence when Mark ignored every one of my calls asking for help. Dad's last wish wasn't for me to buy a Corvette and rub it in anyone's face. It was for me to do better. So I did. I used the first $60,000 to buy and renovate a rundown duplex in our old neighborhood. I partnered with a local nonprofit that helps low-income caregivers, the same kind of folks who end up sacrificing everything like I did. That duplex? It became a free temporary housing spot for caregivers who need a break, a reset, or just somewhere safe to stay between jobs. Then I did it again. And again. By the end of the year, I had 5 properties in total, all managed under a foundation I named after Dad, the Robert Larson Trust. I didn't take a salary. I still lived in the old house. Drove the same beat-up truck. But I was finally free, not just from debt or the courts, but from the chains of a family who'd always treated me like the backup plan. And then came the email. It was from Mark. Subject line: let's talk. It had been 8 months since court. I hadn't heard a word from him, and part of me thought I never would. But there it was, plain as day. Mom's not doing well. I know you probably don't care, but I thought you should know. She had a stroke last week. She's asking for you. I stared at the screen for a long time. It would have been easy to delete it. Pretend it never came. But something in me, curiosity maybe, told me to go. Not for them. For closure. The nursing home was quiet. Smelled like hand sanitizer and overcooked oatmeal. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Fragile. Her face was drawn and pale, eyes cloudy with medication. Mark sat beside her, looking worn down and bitter, like a man who'd lost a war but still wanted to argue about the terms of surrender. She looked up at me when I walked in. Her lips trembled. You came, she whispered. I nodded. You asked? There was a long pause. Then, in a voice so soft I almost missed it, she said, I was wrong about you. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to scream, really? Now? After everything? Another part just stood still, like a kid waiting to see if the ice would hold. She reached out with a shaking hand. I was afraid of losing Mark. So I pushed you away. I swallowed hard. Then I sat beside her, not as a son hoping for love, but as a man finally realizing he didn't need it anymore. We talked for an hour. About Dad. About what I built. About everything we lost to pride, ego, and favoritism. She cried a little. So did I. When I got up to leave, Mark followed me out into the parking lot. He lit a cigarette, hands trembling. You win, he said. I shook my head. There was no game, Mark. That's the problem. You thought there was. He looked at me for a long time, then asked. So what now? I took a breath, looked at him dead in the eye, and said, Now? I go live a life Dad would have been proud of. You do whatever it is you do when you run out of people to lie to. I got in my truck. Drove away. And I never looked back. 1 year later. The Robert Larson Trust has helped 17 families. We're expanding next year to 2 more states. I still get letters from people telling me how just having a break saved their sanity, their relationships, their lives. And every time I get one, I think about how close I was to walking away. How close I came to letting Mark bury me under lies and forged paper. But I didn't. Because Dad saw something in me they didn't. And I finally see it too. The end.